Hey there, welcome back to the Complicated Kids podcast. I'm your host, Gabriele Nicolet. I am a toddler whisperer, a speech therapist, and a parent coach. And today I have Mel Peirce with me. Mel, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm going to do a tiny bit of housekeeping first. If you are watching this video on YouTube, you may hit like, subscribe, or make a comment. So with that said, Mel, please introduce yourself and tell the good people who you are and what you do.
Yes, I am a parenting coach as well, and I like to call myself a parenting educator too. I do a lot of that. I specialize in helping parents who have kids who struggle with big feelings. So I know that's an issue for many parents. I hear a lot of it, like my kid has big feelings. You feel like you're walking on eggshells because you don't want to set them off, don't know what to do when they happen, and that's where I come in.
So one of the things you like to talk about, and one like a very important concept, is this idea of parenting from neutral.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? And like, what is that? Why should we do it? How do we do it? Tell us all the things.
Yes. So I came up with that concept because when you think about like when your kids are having big feelings, it is really difficult as a parent for you to stay in that calm, zen, perfect parenting space, right? Emotions are contagious. And when our kids are having big feelings, they are very connected to those feelings. And whoever's most connected is going to have the most influence, which is why we get sucked into their emotional vortex very easily. So I explained, I said, listen, the goal isn't to try to stay that calm, zen parenting self when your kids are having big feelings, because you just can't. Let's be real, like it's next to impossible. However, between that calm, zen parent, like that we have the goal of being, and in between that and becoming a raving lunatic, which is the opposite end, there's a big space in between. And I like to call that the land of neutral. So if you can just remain neutral, so it's like, okay, I know that I'm not going to become a raving lunatic, but I can't also stay in this perfect space either. If you can just remain neutral, you remain so much more effective at being able to navigate through the situation.
I call that not climbing into the washing machine with them.
Yes. That makes sense.
In coaching school, we say, don't get into the pool with your client.
Right.
And the same is true, yeah, for parents. Like, but talk about this a little bit, because when we become parents, there is a very small baby who is completely dependent on us for everything.
Right.
And when that baby cries, they do have a problem. Maybe I'll put it in air quotes, but they have a need that we need to solve for them, right?
Yep.
And as babies grow, they still have problems, but we are kind of shifting in the way in which we interface with those problems. Do you want to like stay here for a second? And
I do. So, and actually, I love how you explain that, because actually, and what happens is we get trained very well when they're babies, because when they cry, we are supposed to fix things for them, right? And so we are supposed to make sure they're fed, make sure their diapers changed, and they're soothe them to sleep. Like they need us so much more, and they need us to fix those little problems as they're babies, because that's what, and we get wired to do that. The problem is, as they become toddlers, right, and they're older, we're still in that we need to fix the problem space. So we are trying to fix whatever problem it is that is causing the big feelings. The issue is when we do that, we're actually solving the wrong problem at that stage. Because the problem isn't that they are frustrated, that they're upset, right? That they're not going to get what they want. The problem is they don't know how to manage the feelings that come along with that.
ooh, say that again. The
Right.
problem isn't, go ahead.
The problem isn't whatever is causing them to be upset and their big feelings. The problem is they don't know how to handle the big feelings when they happen. Because let's face it, our kids are going to get frustrated and anxious and upset and disappointed. And they're going to feel all of those things throughout their lives. And if they don't know how to manage and navigate through those feelings, right, then those are the skills we need to help our kids build.
Okay. And lots of people listening to this, myself, you at one point in time, also did not know or don't know how
Right.
to navigate those feelings because we don't go to emotion school.
You are correct. We had
And
to learn this, right? As adults.
we have to learn this as adults, or maybe we had good role models. Probably we didn't, because most adults are, I love throwing this term around on this podcast. Most adults are very childist, meaning they think that children are a subspecies of human, and therefore are not worthy of like taking seriously. And so when they have a big feeling that is justified by their perception of reality, we poo-poo it. We're like, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal if you can't have the blue cup. What? Why is that a problem for you?
Right. Right.
And so then they don't learn how to feel those feelings because we didn't learn how to feel those feelings.
Right. Well, and on the flip side, I actually had a mom I was coaching that was, she would, when her kids would get upset at things, she'd put a rule out there. They would get upset, and then she'd get upset that they were getting upset because they didn't want the rule. And I said, well, what if it's okay that they don't like, you're allowed to set the rules. What if they're allowed to be upset? It doesn't mean they don't have to follow the rule. It's just that it's okay if they're upset. And that like blew her mind. Just like, oh, they're allowed to be upset and that's okay. That changed everything for her. Instead of her being frustrated every time that they didn't like what she said, it's just like they were allowed to not like it and she could still stay neutral and should not become up after.
I was going to say, you just like gave a very concrete example of parenting from neutral, which is right. And this is an area all parents, and again, including you and me, get tripped here, which is I am attempting with my adult mind and my life experience to create an environment that is healthy and safe and good for you, my loving, lovely child. Right. And you, loving, lovely child of mine, are not appreciating my efforts on your behalf.
Exactly.
And we get really creased about this.
Yeah. We want them, what is the term here? There was another coach that came like, we want them to accept what we say, like with a smile in their face and a song in their heart. And they never do.
They never do. Said no child ever. Gee, thanks, Mom, for pointing out how I'm being so unreasonable. Like, that's just not going to happen. And we can joke about it here, but when you're in the moment and you perceive that your child is sassing you, or you perceive that your child is not appreciating your efforts, it's very triggering. And so, yeah, I take what you're saying and I really want people to listen and say, like, okay, what if it's my job to hold a boundary and it's their job to be upset about it? And what if nothing has gone wrong here?
Yeah, exactly. It's okay. It's okay that they're upset. Nothing has gone wrong.
So when you told your client this, I mean, she had an aha moment. Mm-hmm. How long has it taken her to kind of integrate that into her practice in daily life?
So I give them tools. All right. So actually, and I call the parent from neutral is as easy. I call it ABC. So A, and it's literally just A is add space. So as soon as that happens, you're going to, and that's the pause, right? That's where you pause. In that pause, you take a deep breath, right? That helps reset your own central nervous system. And so it's pause, take a deep breath, and then C is choose a new thought. And that C is, so we actually, and I remind the parents ahead, because all those other thoughts of, I can't believe they're doing this, right? All of that, those are hardwired and programmed in our brain. So if you want to choose a new thought, you actually have to choose those thoughts ahead of time.
Oh, I love this. I love this. Okay. Yeah. These are, I can't believe this is happening. Here we go again.
Here we go again.
That one's a
they
big one.
know better. They should know better by now, right?
How many times will I have to tell them?
Yes.
When will this be over? Mm-hmm. Is this ever going to end? I can't stand this when they act like this. All of those loops.
Right. All of those loops,
yeah.
Right? So first we figure out what those patterned thoughts are, because they're just patterns. That's all a habit is a pattern. right? And those thoughts are just, they're patterns that because our brains want to do that. It saves energy for us to repeat old thoughts. And so if we want to break that, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to stop thinking that. You actually have to introduce something new. And so we figure out what they're going to think instead and how that feels. So it's just like, and it might be, of course she's upset. Of course she doesn't want to do it, right? She was playing. She doesn't want to stop playing, to get her coat on to leave.
Yep.
Of course. So of course, is one of the ones that we come up with often.
The thing I like to do with my clients, you tell me if you do this too, which is the new thought has to also feel true.
Yeah.
From the place where we're starting. In other words, what is less effective, a lot less effective, is if we pick some like aspirational thought, like, I can stay calm even when my child is having a meltdown. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's not true. It doesn't feel true. It feels like lying to yourself. You're not going to do it.
Right.
And so the other day, actually, I was with somebody and we attached a bunch of conditions onto the thought, which was like,
what I do. I call it the belief ladder, right? Each step has like a different, like, I'm open to the possibility that I could, right?
I could someday in the future believe.
Yes, we do that.
Yeah.
And then each time we take out one, right? Until it's like, I'm becoming someone who, right? I get you 100%. It does have to ring true.
And the reason I want to say that is because I feel like, well, we're recording this in January, so like everybody's got New Year's resolutions. Like, I'm not going to yell at my kids. I'm going to stay calm. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to think new thoughts about my children. Yeah, okay, good. And start from a place where the thought that you're thinking in its current form resonates now.
Yes.
Don't attach it to some, in the future, I will feel this and I will believe it. Believe it now. You're allowed to believe it now. Whatever qualifiers you got to put on there, do that. Mm-hmm. But I hear you. So choosing a new thought. And then, like you said, it's then we go to the point of like, okay, this typically happens when I pick them up from school, when then they get home from school. So then they're going to set their phone alarm to go off like 5 minutes before, and they're going to have written on here, like, here's what I'm going to think. Here's how it's going to roll. Like, and they're going to have stickies up throughout the house, and they're going to literally, I used to have an alarm that went off at 10, 2, and 6 every day. It drove my family nuts. But it was literally, what are you thinking right now? And literally just to get me in the habit of being aware of my thoughts throughout the day. And this is back when I was honestly reprogramming myself so I wouldn't yell. This is really important. And it's obviously related to the topic because everything's related to the topic. But we are usually mostly unaware of what our brain is doing in background when we're not paying attention. And it turns out lots of us are walking around with a very unhelpful narrative about our lives. The guy in front of you cuts you off in traffic. The heater broke. And those are like dramatic events, but like your alarm went off in the morning, or you have an 11 o'clock appointment. And we tell ourselves all of these stories about,
I'm forever telling my clients, there was one summer I decided, it was raining out, we couldn't do anything. Like one summer, like Saturday, like it was raining all day. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to clean the refrigerator. So I spent 4 hours. Like I took everything out. I scrubbed it. Like I put everything back in, and it looked great. And I felt horrible. And literally I'm like, why am I so, like, literally I just felt anxious. I just felt awful. I'm like, I should feel great. Like this is amazing. And then it was, well, what am I thinking? And the thought I wasn't even aware was, you should have got this done in 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Oh,
this shouldn't have taken you 4 hours to do. You should have had it done in 2 hours. I wasn't even aware of it. It was just like underlying. And so that was such an eye-opener for me of like how our thoughts can sneak up on us, and literally even like not even on a conscious level, but just be kind of floating around out there and really affect us. And so that's why I came up with I'm going to set an alarm literally to be like, what are you really like? What are you thinking right now? Like, what is floating around out there?
And listen, I mean, you could do this or not do this. I think before we become parents, it's a lot easier to skate by and compensate or numb or, distract ourselves with from this internal monologue that may or may not be helpful. When you have a small child, when you have a child of any age, actually, I am now really coming to believe that they are here to teach us what we need to know. And the way they do that is by pushing our buttons. And when your buttons get pushed, if one can be grateful for the lesson, that is like the ultimate Jedi mind trick,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like,
Oh, it does. Yeah, when your buttons get pushed, it becomes that's an indicator like, okay, there's a programmed thought out here that I should take a look at and see what it is. Like, what is driving me? Because otherwise, honestly, our kids are the ones pulling all the strings and we're just the puppet. And so we have to decide that we're not like, okay, we're going to work on this because, whenever, and I figured it out, it was myself. Like I was yelling, like everyone else was controlling my emotions. And I was just turning, and I'm like, oh, no, no, no. All right, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to figure this out. And because I want to be in charge of me, I don't want to give anyone else the power to make me angry, make me upset, make me like, I'm going to decide. I may choose to still be angry about something, but I want it to be my choice, not.
and that's where those big emotions, those deeply feeling kids, right? It makes us think we have to be upset somehow, right? There's, again, back to that like problem solving mentality. It's like, well, if you're upset, then clearly I have to be upset too. Actually, no. When we can get to neutral, when we can stop ourselves from climbing into the washing machine with them and be like, oh, you're on a big spin cycle right now. Oh, poor thing. How can we make this better for you?
Right.
Right? Versus like, oh my God, now we're in the spin cycle together and I don't know which end is up.
Yeah. Versus like, you know what? I hear you. It's really frustrating when this happens and when we can't do what you were really hoping to do and the plans change. I understand, right? That's that little piece of, I get it. And you are absolutely allowed to have your feelings and that's okay. It doesn't mean we're going to go off and do whatever you want, right? But we can empathize.
It's funny because that's another topic of conversation, which is validation. Validation emanates from neutrality.
Yeah.
So if you've heard the term, like, yes, validate your child's emotions and felt constrained by that, chances are you're not neutral.
That's true.
Because when you are neutral, right, you can like give it away for free. Validation is like total. I always say validation is free. You can give it away to whoever you want.
Right.
It doesn't mean you accept their worldview. It doesn't mean you accept their behavior. It doesn't mean you accept their actions and that you're going to do what they want. That's not what it means.
Right. It just means that, again, that's that piece of like, I hear you. They feel seen and understood, which they want more than anything else.
Yeah.
They do. But that's that whole piece of when we're not neutral, when we're not neutral, all of our strategy go right out the window. Like you can know all the things to do, but if you get sucked into that emotional vortex, their emotions, right? It's sucked into the washing machine with them. All of those great strategies are going right out the window.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a piece here of going back and tending to the parts of yourself, if you want to use IFS language, the inner child, you can call it whatever you want, it doesn't matter. The parts of yourself that were shut down as a child and getting, I don't know, how do you do it? Like getting in touch with them, understanding where they're coming from, not pushing them away.
Right. And so I would say one of the biggest things that comes up for me is recognizing, and I tell people, like, recognizing as a parent, you are always going to be giving more than you're getting back.
Yeah.
Always. Right? So that is never think that your kids are going to appreciate you on the level that you're giving to them. It's not going to happen. So and this is where I come in, like that piece of like child, when you talk about growing up your inner child, this or that. For me, it's just about let's learn to appreciate yourselves. So that's that little piece of recognizing and appreciating yourself for what you do. Mm-hmm. And so actually, I know for my kids, it used to be when they were younger, be like, I'd do something and they wouldn't say anything, be like, thanks, Mom. You're the best mom ever, Mom.
All the time. All the time.
Yeah. And then they turn around like, thanks, Mom. I get it. I'm like, yes, winning Mother of the Year award here. Like,
I used to give myself 10,000 points. I'd be like, Mommy, 10,000 points for you for being so awesome.
There you go. Right. But in the meantime, when you're doing that, you're saying that thank you to yourself. Right. So it feels better than thinking they never appreciated it. Right. You're saying thank you. So you're appreciating you. Yeah. And you're in the same aspect, getting them to start to do those little things. And it does. Like, I will tell you, like, my son had his wisdom teeth out on Friday. Yeah, no fun. But Saturday morning, I was checking. We actually were going away. I was checking. I'm like, you feeling okay? He goes, yeah. He goes, Mom, thank you so much for everything you did for me yesterday. I really appreciate it. I love you. Like, he's 24 now. Yeah. So the fact that, one, it warmed my heart, but two, I'm like, oh, I trained these kids well. But I can't tell you, I must have said, thank you, Mom, literally like 100,000 times when he was like throughout growing up. So eventually, yeah, it will come back at times.
I love it. But even that strategy, which I highly recommend, if you want to teach your kids to be grateful and have good manners, say those things that you want them to say over and over and over again yourself. They will imitate you. That's a different podcast too. But you can't do that if you're sitting there thinking, well, you should already know how to say thank you. I've told you that 100,000 times, right? Yeah. If you're from neutral, then you're like, oh, you must have forgotten. I'm going to show you how.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, if you get angry, that's going out there. And they will hear it in your voice too. If you're like, thanks, Mom, like they're going to hear it. They're not going to appreciate that and they're going to get turned off. Mm-hmm. So, but if you're neutral, you're like, hey, thanks, Mom. You're the best mom ever, Mom. Like, first of all, I feel better, right? And they're hearing it, but it has to come from neutral. If I was doing that from anger, it wouldn't be effective at all.
And if you're doing, I think that the place that we get to is like, we feel the anger, we suppress the anger, then we go from like, grit my teeth because I know I'm supposed to like, it's toxic positivity is what it ends up being, right? Yeah. Which is like a positive overlay on top of a negative emotion. They feel that too, by the way.
So, yeah, they feel it all.
They feel it all. And so, again, if you've been listening to this and being like, nice work if you can get it, like I couldn't possibly be neutral. My kid is like smearing poop on the walls or yelling at me that he hates me all the time, or she is, doing whatever she's doing. There is a way to parent from neutral. Even when, and I'm putting that in air quotes, your child is behaving in very extreme ways and having very extreme emotions. Is it harder? Sure, maybe. But it's also totally doable. So,
yep. That's another but it's more work. It is more work. Yeah. And actually it's probably when it's most important. Yeah. That is most important. That's when it's most important for you to manage your mindset. Because otherwise you are giving them all of the power in the relationship and you do not want to do that. So that's when it's really critical. And part of it is, and usually those types of parents I'm explaining and coming from a place of, you know what, you don't want to give them their power and let's talk about so that's when you hold on to that. Like, I am not giving up my power here. Nope. I'm going to hold on to it. Right. So, and there are strategies around that, but that's when it is really critical, that neutral piece for you. Yep. Because otherwise, it is, it's tough for you, but it also impacts your house, your relationship with your kids, like all the relationships in your house, like it can be tough.
Yeah. Um, we could sit here all day.
I know we could.
It would be really fun, but we're going to cut this here.
Okay.
So if people want to learn more about you, how do they do that, Mel?
I am honestly, I'm at melpeirce.com. It's melpeirce.com. And on Instagram, I'm at melpeirce.coach. And so I have I've got all sorts of resources. I write weekly. So there are tons and tons of articles out on my website to check out and that get posted on Instagram and all in Facebook and all the places. So,
Perfect. We
and
will
Peirce,
link.
yeah,
Go
link
ahead.
it up. Peirce is PEI. It is backwards. I'm just going to point that out. My name is spelled wrong according to the rules.
All right. We will link to all of that so you will not have to remember spelling. And thank you so much for being here today. It was really
Oh,
fun.
it was fun. Thank you for inviting me.